Chapter 43. Once more, for the fate of all. Beyond the murk of the oil-tinged skies above, heavy is the air, so much so that it stings the eyes. The horizon, if one is willing to squint through the tears, is tinted and stained in a taunting red. The inexorable march of the winds which dragged with them the tumbling tidal waves, those great collectors of everything, have pushed the ambience of the god from the forefront, allowing a bloody lens through which Sa peeks from and haunts us. The shambles of Nalarta, the bouquet of ice pillars, and all of the surrounding geographical landmarks are immersed and dispersed for countless Kalama. Adrift and in pieces are the debris of crushed buildings, forests, and mountains. Tiamattu relinquishes his fighting stance into a drooping fluidity, sending away the rigid confines of his posture. His shoulders, head, and arms fall freely, as though nothing could hope to disturb his hard-earned peace. Alas, he does not repose for the sake of relaxation, for originating beneath him, the new sea is introduced to a malicious black ink. There exists a baffling abundance of it, leaking endlessly by the pores of his miserable souls. Before I can fathom it, his chilling aura had begun to encompass and accompany each drop of the filthy fluid. We float high over this sea, black as the endless night, cold as the frigid tundra. The pale god repositions himself once more, his wingspan now fully extended with his sight on the moon, Ara. No! This is the first muttered quiver of fright that I've heard escape from Parias, and it plagues my ears. Our oppressor is not yet finished with us. A blackened chain with a large arrowhead bursts from the god's sternum and flies straight into the far-off celestial body. Then, with both hands, Tiamattu grips and yanks the chain, employing every fiber of his might, and thus pulling Ara into our atmosphere. Dracoma hesitates to move, decidedly steeling himself. Tiamattu does not concern himself with his own collateral damage by the coming collision of the foreign mistress of Oma. Misfortune flirts with our world, and she has familiarized herself with us well, for we would suffer the totality of the consequence ought we attempt to intercept the falling abode of the Drakin. There is no stopping it. Parias cares deeply for Fasima, but he knows that she cannot be helped. May Olum salvage her. Yes, I invoke you, for I am decisively powerless and I know not who else to call upon. The yellowed glowing sphere transitionally morphs, shade by rolling shade, into a friction-lit fiery rock penetrating the layers of cloud, inky fog, and night.
For it is revealed unto you the profound truth that you are capable of all the wickedness and malevolence of the world. Yet you have conquered this enticement, in defiance of its allure for dominion. This triumph of righteousness, a grace bestowed solely through my divine providence, is with you. Truly, had you have yielded, had you chosen a different path, you would not find yourself in discourse with me, but rather with Tiamattu, or the one who is worse than he.
This memory does not belong to me, or more precisely, it does not belong to me insofar as I am En. It is in the custody of Parias, and the reminiscence of it has been shared between us. It becomes emergent and unmistakable that Tiamattu's speech of calamity, the reoccurring quote of my dream, was one directed towards Parias in those bygone centuries. Hence, it has bubbled to the surface of my consciousness. And likewise, this very recent revelation has done the same. However, these words were not breathed by the god of suffering. Evidently so, as the speaker made it clear that ought it not have been declared by him, it would then be Tiamattu who would have proclaimed a likely contrasting set of utterances. Fragments of these recollections are entwining as long-lost companions, rejoined once again. Has my esteemed ancestor conversed with Yolum? Could this be the cause of my unforeseen inclination to ponder upon and seek solace in him? I can discern no other link that would explain why his name emerged when I beheld the radiant mother tree calling to me on the desolate horizon, or now, as I implore his intervention to rescue and receive Oma's last guardian. With my Drakin's eye view, I witness the assault on my faithful guide. Fasima clings to the crust of the falling Ara. The pressure of its velocity stamps her into it, regardless if she had wished to brace herself or not. Yet she does. She does so as well as one in her situation may. Her claws slivered into the rock, her tail grasping a nearby boulder as an additional measure to secure her hold. She can do no more than this, tensing and constricting to protect herself. The moon begins to splinter and break apart. One giant mass turns into a few slightly smaller ones, emitting and spewing forth an army of projectiles from each, and those superheating into a sky of meteors. A scorching tribulation rains down. Parias, in his steadfastness, rapidly maps a trajectory, our eyes shooting to and fro, back and forth, up and down, around and about our skull like a crazed gnat, beginning with the nearest fragment and ending with the furthest. With his starry blade in hand, Dracoma soars with a blurring swiftness, embarking on the route he devised, slicing and hacking through the volley of lunar debris until they are reduced to pebbles and sand. He's carefully avoiding the main body. Is there anything we can do against such an outrageous force? At this rate, by the time we have eliminated the thousands of less significant pieces, Ara will have come into contact with Oma's surface. The two bodies, Oma and Ara, were to love one another from afar, always attempt but never to act on the impulse of their desires. And yet an instigator, knowing fully that their union would bring about demise, coaxed one into the other.
Do not think I would make it easy for you, Dracoma.
The pale god unleashes a flurry of branching chains from the main cable hooked into Ara. The black metals pursue Parias along his aerial path. He parries and slides his blade against the first two links, but with three more closing in and his back soon to be cornered against a larger fragment of the moon, he mutters under his breath, Command! Astral Inferno! In an instinctive surge, Parias conjures a novel command. It spins into a blazing whirlwind. His fiery longsword poised to slice through air, rock, and metal all the same. The spin intensifies into a cosmic tornado, engulfing the incoming chains and the stellar chunk behind us. Sustaining its form, he drills into the next piece and the following thereafter. One by one, with an unprecedented haste, he devours the foreign stones spanning dozens of Kalama. The momentary cosmic spectacle introduces into the dreary skies a widespread flickering of vaporous hope, a colorful beacon for any survivors who would dare to look up from their self-pity. Parias descends towards the surface, bypassing the yet falling main body of Ara. Throughout his descent, he scans the whole of the moon for any trace of Fasuma's presence, but there is nothing. She must have been consumed by the abrasive flames or concealed by the crush of a cavernous crevice. Parias masterfully pierces through the blackest waters without so much as causing a splash, wave, or sprinkle. His breach was void of any disruption, as though it had not occurred. He swims with a velocity akin to his flight, positioning himself precisely under the pale god's feet. We erupt from behind him, swinging for a sleight of hand decapitation. However, the immortal has been around for far too long and has seen enough that such a trick could never hope to slay him. Tiamattu throws his hands behind his nape, willingly sacrificing them to the astral blade, then turns to face Parias, contorting only his waist in a bone-breaking maneuver. From the depths of his foul pit, and through the channel underscored by his wicked tongue, the pale god unleashes a crushingly concentrated horde of insects. The ancestral hero reacts swiftly and accordingly, slicing through the initial swarm as to get near enough for a striking upkick to the god's jaw, assisted in height and reach by timing the peak of a swelling wave beneath them. He maintains the extension of his assaulting leg as an unmoving pillar whilst utilizing my weight command to consolidate and coagulate the bulge of water as his temporary pedestal. The furious beam of pestilence is forced upwards so that it collides with the remnants of Ara. Consuming her, the volcanic fountain of arthropods cushions and slows the freefall of the descending moon, whilst its lit surface steadily exhausts the threat of the contagion. It does not last but for a few seconds. Tiamattu circles his hips and legs around and traces them back into their sockets. Parias retracts his leg to adapt, but in the moment he returns it to the waters. Tiamattu drives his foot into his chest. Just as I can feel Parias' movements, I too can feel his pain. The force ricochets us far across the pooled domain, our frames skimming the surface of the ebon ocean. Parias recovers himself after the seventh lengthy hop by the outburst of his expanding wings. The pale god renews his taken fingers and lifts them up into a shrug. He dons a pompous grin at our efforts toward the impossible as Ara crashes just behind him, breaking the waters into a burst of dark mist and yet another ripple of roaring tsunamis. But in this instance, they travel outwardly to consume the vestiges left behind by their late brethren. Thinking quickly, Parias activates my mask command, expanding it past the mere outline of our body and into an encompassing oval of He does so as to allow capacity for breathable air. There's no escaping the shockwave nor the tides when they're already so near. We must endure the brunt of them, and we're certain to be swept by their current. Once more, and for the fate of all! There is no luck, sage, right. Yet I am not alone, Parias says aloud. Does he mean me? Or is it Yalum whom he refers to? And where I fail, he shall succeed, he proudly shouts at the end of his decree as the roaring tsunamis pull us into the sightless deep.